Friends, without wasting much time, I take this opportunity to welcome each one of you today to the second day, day 2 of the Delhi Literature Festival Monsoon edition. I'm very excited. And why I'm excited is because I'm really privileged to have some amazing authors, some amazing creative minds amongst us today, starting with Sri Sudha Pai and Sri Sajan Kumarji, uh, who have written book on Maya, Modi and Azad, Dalit politics in the time of Hindutva. We have Mr. Vikas Pathak, who is the Deputy Associate Editor from Indian Express, to moderate. And before I request my friend, my colleague Shashank to formally introduce the panel, I'll just run you through the day's programs, following which is the session on Love in the Time of Hate by Dr. Rakshanda Jalil in conversation with Poonam Saxena, former weekend editor, Hindustan Times. Then we have a live musical performance which will be presented by Dr. Amna Mirza. And then we have a session at 5 p.m., session on Power Within, the Leadership Legacy of Narendra Modi by Dr. R. Balasubramaniam. Followed with 6 to 7 p.m. we have a book on The Girl with 7 Lives by Vikas Swarup, author diplomat. And then we conclude the day and the festival with a session with Mrs. Sudha Murthy, who's also the Member of Parliament now, and she's also the chairperson of the Infosys Foundation. So that is how we are going to be, and I request each one of you to please stay for this amazing, diverse, minds which we have today at day 2 of the Delhi Literature Festival. Ashok ji is here. Thank you so much. All my friends, Subhash ji, and of course, I just mentioned about Gaurav and Palka and the daughter Myra. Amazing, young talents India is producing. So, without much delay, I'll request my friend and my colleague Shashank to please come here. And I must inform you that we have a table at the back of this hall where we are also requesting the authors to sign their books. And in the adjacent hall, we have a souvenir hall which is called Vayu, where we'll also be selling the books. So if anyone is interested in buying the books, they can just step out after or before the session. I mean, now the session is about to start. After the session, buy those books, come back here and get it signed by the authors themselves. Can I request Shashank to please come, and over to you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, as was mentioned by Ajay, we starting the day 2 with a bang. Given my background, I use the term bang because I was in the army. And I'm grateful to Delhi LitFest and to Ajay personally for giving me this opportunity to get connected with this illustrious panel and the discussion which we all are looking forward to. The book Maya, Modi, Azad, Dalit Politics in the Time of Hindutva by Sudha Pai and Sajan Kumar was released in May last year. I just endeavored to give a very brief introduction to the book before we get on to the brass tacks as such. This book centers on Dalit politics in India, especially Uttar Pradesh, and is a must-read for understanding why Dalits are attracted away from their core political party, the BSP, to the right-wing BJP. This is the main core of the book. Although the nuances seem to have altered as suggested by the latest poll outcomes from Uttar Pradesh, I shall be touching upon this later very briefly. The emergence of Dalit political consciousness, the strengthening of Dalit movement, and finally its consolidation in terms of political gain have been discussed widely in academic writings. Still, many questions remain unanswered on issues concerning socio-economic and cultural nuances. The dominance of Hindutva politics, its appropriation of marginal groups and their symbols, the shift of Dalit votes to BJP, the BJP's welfare politics and so on, strongly indicate the end of the era of identity politics and a faint hope of revival of Dalit politics away from being a monolith. Maya, Modi, Azad helps us understand the present and future of Dalit politics through rigorous documentation of the scattered voices of Dalit assertions and their hidden potential to reclaim The Lost Domain of Dalit Politics in Indian Democracy. The book maps the shift in Dalit politics with a focus on Uttar Pradesh because, after all, this was the state where Mayawati dreamt of forming an umbrella party with a Dalit core. She succeeded in doing so, but could not keep them together for long. The book is divided into 3 sections. Each section meticulously explains the hidden dynamics of Dalit politics and highlights the normally ignored trajectories that have shaped the shift of Dalits away from the core that BSP had visualized. In the first section, called Building a Rainbow Party with Dalit Core, the authors discuss Mayawati's Sarvjan experiment with a stronghold over Dalit votes and its grand success. They show as to how, with electoral success, deepening democratic consciousness gave rise to new aspirations that led to the fragmentation of Dalit community. A fragmentation which, as per one of the authors, Dr. Sajjan, is required to be celebrated than lamented upon. The second section, called Dalit Interface with Hindutva, talks about BJP's strategy of inclusion and appropriation based on welfareism to Labharthis that led to shifting of Dalit votes. The third section, called New Stirrings Emerging Dalit Organizations, discusses the emergence of small and regional Dalit organizations with a social justice agenda. Their aim being to provide a platform for Dalit protest against atrocities and revive Ambedkarite consciousness through everyday struggles. The authors discuss the emergence of new leaders and look at their potential to step in where Mayawati probably fell short. The strength of this work is what the authors have covered a broad canvas comprising different phases of Dalit politics. They have substantiated their arguments with field data to demonstrate the heterogeneity as against homogeneity of Dalits. In a nutshell, this is a must-read book for all those who want to understand the future of Dalit politics, the possibility of return of Dalit votes to BSP from the BJP, or the chances of fragmented Dalit groups loaded with democratic consciousness making a new move to explore better new options. The book offers a lens to decode the puzzle that is Dalit politics in Uttar Pradesh and expresses the faint hope that an able leadership and strong opposition may change the same. Maybe a beginning has already been made towards this. This beginning or the change that I point to has amply been made clear by one of the biggest stories that emerged from the recent Lok Sabha election results in Uttar Pradesh and the shift in Dalit vote in the state. While the BSP has seen a near decimation, the BJP too has lost a significant chunk of its non-Jatav Dalit vote, and even as it improved its vote share amongst Jatavs, a core constituency of the BSP. While the BSP has not even managed to open its account in this election, BJP's tally has fallen from 62 in 2019 to just 33 in this election. Meanwhile, the Samajwadi Party, traditionally perceived to have an antagonistic relations with Dalits, managed to turn a corner when it comes to the non-Jatav Dalit vote. Would the authors today like to tweak their hypothesis that they test in Maya, Modi, Azad? That's a question which probably they would be delving into while discussing the book. We shall look forward to these issues and much more in the discussion ahead. A short introduction of the authors and the moderator. Professor Pai is a well-known political scientist, author, and columnist. She retired as Professor of Political Science at the Center for Political Studies and as Pro-Vice Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University in January 2016. She has over 35 years of teaching and research experience. Dr. Sajjan is a researcher and a political scientist. He also holds a doctorate from JNU and currently is a fellow at Nehru Memorial Museum and Library. And finally, last but not the least, the moderator, Mr. Vikas Pathak, is Deputy Associate Editor with the Indian Express and writes on national politics. He has over 17 years of journalistic experience and has covered national and regional politics in India quite extensively. So without any more ado, I will not get in between you all and the panelists. And may I request the authors and the moderator to please come up for a brief photo session and thereafter the discussion. Thank you so much.
Uh, Today we are here to have a discussion on the book Maya Modi Azad, written by Professor Sudha Pai and Dr. Sajjan Kumar. And I also had the opportunity to review this book when it came. Well, why is the book so important, so to say? There has been quite a bit of research on Dalit politics and the Dalit movement in India academically. And so far as North India is concerned, we are lucky to have two authors who have, over the past several decades between themselves, engaged in extensive research on Dalit politics in Uttar Pradesh. So Professor Sudha Pai, in fact, my first detailed introduction, academically speaking, to the BSP was via her authoritative book on the BSP, which came decades ago, The Unfinished Democratic Revolution, The Rise of the BSP, which actually documented a strand of what could be called Ambedkarite kind of politics via Kashi Ram and the foundation of the BSP, via the BAMSEF, DS4, in great detail. So that was the time when what we call autonomous Dalit politics, modeled around the politics of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, was on the ascendant in UP. That is when the book came. Another edited book also came when the BSP won the elections around 2007. Now what has happened is that the authors between themselves are in a position to in a way nuance the argument to a great extent, because Sajjan Kumar's research begins in the last decade or so, when the BSP was already going past its prime, and around 2013-14 when the BJP was on the rise. Now, this perplexed many people because, there is a sense of nuance on the ground, and then there is something that, having studied in JNU myself also, we call the university common sense. So the university common sense always believes in essences. So in order to be authentic, you have to display a certain essence. So if you are an authentic Dalit, you must be doing an Ambedkarite kind of politics. So that is the university common sense that is found across the country. But on the ground, and that is what the book points so interestingly to, that once an assertive middle class comes into its own among Dalits. For instance, the aim of the entire movement of Kanshi Ram, beginning from BAMSEF going up to the BSP, was to provide Atma Samman to Dalits, a sense of self-respect. But what happens? When you succeed in instilling a sense of self-respect, is it that politics becomes frozen right there? It does not. Self-respect also means a certain autonomy of a different kind, individual agency, which leads to fragmentation. So what we have witnessed with the decline of the BSP, as the book says, is fragmentation of Dalit votes. Now, fragmentation, once it starts happening, can happen any which way. There's a lot of tactical voting that happens. Sometimes a few caste groups may become committed voters of an alternative political party, right? Sometimes they may be tactical voters. So now when they are tactical voters, they are looking for a party that gives them a better deal. And those choices can keep changing. All these are signs of agency. So as Sajjan Kumar said in the book, that this fragmentation is not to be rude. There's a tendency, again, a university common sense, that if a certain group does not behave the way I want them to behave, according to what I have been taught and I am invested in, I start disliking it. But the fact of the matter is that in democracy, such are things, as Sajjan said in the book, that Atma Samman, coming up of the middle class among Dalits, is bound to lead to fragmentation. Because as we know, any group that is already doing well or has a history of maybe a few, one could say, generations having done well, it is not easy to predict what kind of politics they'll do. In a single family, you might have people voting for different political parties or supporting them. So that is where we are today. So this election, as Shashankji said, also saw a further churn in Uttar Pradesh. The fragmentation this time was such that the BJP was only a very partial beneficiary, unlike the last 10 years. And it seems that some of that vote may also have turned to Samajwadi Party or the Congress in some seats. In Nagina, certainly it did turn to Chandrasekhar Azad. The book talks about him. There's a subsection on him. So if I begin with it, I would first want to ask Professor Sudha Pai, to what extent, like the common belief is that the BSP has eventually failed. But to what extent lies a success of the BSP within its failure? To the extent that while the party may have declined, the social vision of the party seems to have, you know, that Atma Samman, politics of Atma Samman, that seems to have got established. What do you say about that?
Well, the BSP was a dominant party in the 1990s, and as you said, it provided self-respect, dignity, political empowerment. But in the 2000s, there has been tremendous change, and I would locate that change both in the politics of Uttar Pradesh and within the Dalit community. Within Uttar Pradesh, we find the identity politics slowly weakens, which had been very important in the 1990s. And there is the rise of, among Dalits, what one can call aspiration. You see, globalization was very late in Uttar Pradesh because of identity politics. And it's only somewhere towards the end of the 1990s, having achieved a modicum of political empowerment and self-respect and also self-confidence which it gives, ultimately there is the rise of aspiration. I think that is a very central argument in our book. So you are no longer satisfied with self-respect. You want something more. And therefore there begins the search for a different political party which can provide you economic and material benefit as well. You know, the hallmark of educated Dalits today is aspiration to enter into the high-paying sectors of the economy, to gain good education, and why not? So we find that in the 2000s, there is the search for a new party. You see, if you look at UP, the volatility. 2007, Mayawati gets a majority through her Sarvajan campaign. 2012, SP gets a majority. 2014, BSP gets no votes, no seats in the Lok Sabha election. And 2019, there is this Mahagathbandhan, and BSP gets about 10 seats, SP gets less. And ultimately now in 2024, it is the India Alliance which has, got a large number of the Dalit votes. Although India Alliance also got votes across the board, I think we must remember that the BJP lost votes from all the groups, from, maybe less among the upper caste. They also lost amongst the backward caste. I mean, otherwise, why would they win in places like Amethi, for example? So, there is this search for a new party. And why not? What we are arguing in the book is that Dalit politics and the Dalit movement in UP has entered a post-BSP phase. That doesn't necessarily mean that the BSP is going to disappear. It is definitely in decline. But what it means is that it has fulfilled its purpose. And now Dalits, they have tremendous respect for Behenji. That's not a problem. Some section, particularly the Jatovs, still are extremely attached to her. But they want to move on. And as I say in the book somewhere, as we both say in the book somewhere, you know, when upper castes vote first for the Congress, then for the BJP, then for the SP maybe and the BSP, then no eyebrows are raised. But when Dalits vote for the BJP, they are voting for a Manuvadi party. So I think there has been a certain maturing of the Dalit movement in the Hindi heartland, particularly in UP. Thanks to the long period of Kanchiram and Mayawati, and earlier also there was the RPI and so on. But as a result of this, what has happened is that there is fragmentation. Until the 2024 election, when Sajjan did field work, what did they tell him? बहन जी के लिए बहुत इज्जत है, जब एट्रॉसिटी होती है तो चंद्रशेखर को फ़ोन करते हैं, बट जब वोट डालना है ना तो हम सोचते हैं और बीजेपी को डालते हैं. You see, so the extreme complexity of thinking and the way in which Dalit votes, the pattern of voting among Dalits and thinking has emerged. So I would say in 2024, yes, it's the smaller Dalits that have moved towards the India alliance. Normally, Dalits don't like to vote for the SP. But this time, the SP gave large number of seats to lower backwards and not to the Yadavs. I think there were only 5 tickets given to Yadavs. And there was the presence of the Congress also in the India alliance. And at one time, Dalits used to vote for the Congress. And they were angry with the BJP. So ultimately, there is a search, further search for another party. And therefore, they moved towards the India alliance. And I would say that in this election, that is what we have seen. It doesn't mean that they will stay there. They could come back to the BJP. I mean, it will depend on how things move. But I think the signs of it were there in the 2022 election, when, you know, BJP seats fell by almost 50 plus in numbers. So there has been a certain rising anger in terms of employment, in terms of inflation. I think after 2019, once COVID came in also, there was a lot of problems where UP was concerned. So I would say 2024 is a further, you know, choice that Dalits are making. And we don't know which way they would go later. But coming back to BSP would be difficult because they don't see BSP as a party that is going to win or which is going to provide them the kind of political representation that they had earlier. So I would think that we must see it in the larger thing of a search for a different party which will provide them what they think they need at this point of time.
So, well, stepping back about a debate, about a decade. So, well, Sajjan actually over the last 7-8 years made a very significant and interesting argument. So, when there was a time when the BSP was on the rise in UP, it was believed to be the natural party of Dalits. At the same time, that was also a time when the BJP would be called in casual conversations as a Baniya Brahman party. So the predecessor of the BJP, the Jan Sangh, had a small base among urban upper castes. Of course, the party of the upper caste, quote unquote, used to be the Congress at that point of time. Later, there was a shift to the BJP. So when the upper caste, so-called upper caste, shifted to the BJP, it was called a Baniya Brahman party, but it also started, you know, making some inroads into OBCs like the Lodh community of Uma Bharti, Vinay Katiyar. But it was a partial outreach. So that was a kind of an outreach from a very upper caste social location. That was actually K.N. Govindacharya, who was very instrumental in that. He was in BJP that time. But around 2014, and Sajjan noticed it in his field trips, and he coined a word for it called subaltern Hindutva, which basically means, one, there was an